Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It is 10:30 here in Boston, so we're going to get started. Welcome to the December Team Studio TLCC webinar. I'd like to welcome our speakers, Christian Gudemon, Nathan Freeman, and Mark Lusink, who will be presenting a deep dive into the Essentials project from OpenNTF. My name is Courtney Carter. I'm the Inbound Marketing Specialist at Team Studio. I'm joined by Howard Greenberg and Paul Delanebbia from TLCC, and our speakers, Christian, Nathan, and Mark. Nathan is stepping in for Paul Withers. On the agenda today, I'll be taking a few moments to tell you about Team Studio, who we are, and what we do. I'll then be passing the controls to Howard at TLCC so he can do the same, and then we'll dive right into today's topic. Before we get started, a few administrative things to cover. We have over 250 attendees today. To protect your privacy, the attendee list is not public. You are all muted during this session, so participation will be through the chat window and the Q&A panel. We are doing Q&A at the end of the session, but you're welcome to ask your question at any point in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to it once the formal presentation has concluded. This session is being recorded, and the link will be sent to you in a follow-up email later this week. So a little bit about Team Studio. We may have assisted you in the past with application development. We've been delivering innovative developer tools and productivity tools to the Notes and Domino community since 1996, where we specialized in source code control, version management, and source code management. And we moved into the mobile application arena in 2010 with Unplugged. Unplugged gives you the ability to extend your Notes apps out to mobile devices. The unique thing about Unplugged is that it leverages the powerful technology of XPages and provides a native app experience for the user. And these apps have the capability to function when offline. You may have heard we released Unplugged 3.0 a few weeks ago. This new version runs apps twice as fast, and development of apps is easier than ever. For more information, click on the banner on the Team Studio homepage. We're very proud to have been the recipient of the IBM Collaboration Solution Award at the Connect conference earlier this year for Unplugged. This product is available on major mobile platforms, BlackBerry, Android, and iOS. In addition to Unplugged as a platform, which allows clients to create custom mobile applications that meet their own specs, we provide off-the-shelf templates like Team Studio Continuity and OneView approvals. We recently announced an additional template named Customer View. This is a lightweight mobile CRM solution for your field workforce. With this, users have the ability to view, edit, and manage customer information, and also have access to large media files and videos like collateral to use during their sales meetings with prospects and customers. Unplugged works on all the major platforms, and we'd be happy to arrange a demo to show you how these tools work. Just contact me during this webinar, or you can contact us directly from our website or reach out to us by phone. Our next webinar with TLCC will be in January. We'll send out more information about this in the coming weeks. On December 17th, we'll be presenting at a Social Biz Online event about enterprise mobile strategy. Visit our website for more information. Our new Wireless Wednesdays webinar series begins on January 8th. This 4-part free monthly series presented by Matt White will guide developers through Notes and Domino mobile development. Part 1 takes a look at the tools and frameworks that can help you develop for mobile. We'll be at IBM Connect again this January. Come see us at booth 114. We'll have plenty to show you and lots of stuff to give away. Visit our website for more information. And check out the promotion we're currently running on usage auditing if you'd like to audit the usage of your Notes databases. Click on the banner on our homepage for more information or reach out to me directly. And with that, I'd like to pass the presentation on to Howard so he can talk a little bit about TLCC. Howard?
Thank you, Courtney. So let's see, you should be starting to see my screen now.
Yep, you can see it.
Okay. And so welcome everyone to our last webinar of the year, which is going to get into a really exciting project from OpenNTF called the Essential Project that we have three excellent presenters to speak to you about. Excuse me. As Courtney mentioned, we will have a webinar in January. We haven't set the time yet and date, as well as the topic. We think it's going to be on using Java in XPages, but that is something we're hoping for. And some other topics we'd like to get into during the year are using source control in your Domino Designer. And if you have any ideas for topics, feel free to send me an email. You can send it to webmaster@tlcc.com. Because we're going to start to pencil in the schedule for next year, and we definitely would like to get your feedback. Oh, and also let me mention, when you get these slides, that URL that's on this slide is where you can go to see the upcoming webinars, and also has a link to the previous webinars. All our previous webinars are recorded, going back for quite a while. So there's a lot of great information there that you can go back and either review or learn if you missed any. I mentioned earlier, probably before a lot of you joined, that tomorrow is the last day for the early bird pricing for Connect. They've already published the sessions. There's a lot of good XPages sessions that are available. So in spite of the name change, it's not called Lotus Tree anymore, it's called Connect. There's still a lot of great technical content about the products that we still knowingly call or affectionately call the Lotus product set. So definitely, if you're interested in going, you might want to try to decide by tomorrow because you could save at least $300. A couple quick things about TLCC. A lot of you know us. A lot of you have taken courses from us. We've been doing courses on Notes and Domino for developers, admins, and users since 1997. We've always done self-paced courses, and in the last couple of years, we've also gotten into on-site private classes as well as web-based instructor-led live classes. And we also have a mentoring services as well to help our students apply what they've learned in our courses to their actual development. And what's of interest to some of you is we do have free courses. These are complete courses. We have an intro to XPages development. So if you're fairly new to XPages, that's a great 2-3 hour course that is totally free. There's no obligation or anything like that. And we have a great sale going on through the end of the year. So check that out if you're interested in learning more about XPages or Domino Admin or anything Notes and Domino related. I mentioned that we not only do self-paced courses, but we also do other ways of learning as well. And we've worked with a number of customers to develop a kind of a customized training plan that uses a combination of not only our self-paced courses, but also either a private on-site course or a web-based instructor-led online course, and as well as mentoring to help them apply those skills to their applications. A couple success stories. One was a company called DAI. They're a company in Bethesda, Maryland. They go out all over the world to countries in Africa and Afghanistan and other countries, and they help manage the infrastructure projects like an irrigation project to help bring up the living conditions of that country. And as part of this project management, they have a set of Notes applications that they roll out for each project. So they also have a group of Notes developers who go out and customize those applications for that unique project. And so these Notes developers that they have, they wanted to start using XPages, and their skill set was they basically knew the formula language, but weren't really, formal programmers. So we actually went in and, using our LotusScript courses, taught them the Domino object model and introduced them to an object-oriented programming language in a week-long on-site course. And then they were able to use, now start using LotusScript in their Notes client work, but also that kind of gave them the foundation for a follow-on week of XPages and JavaScript training that introduced them to XPages and JavaScript. So when this application gets converted to XPages, they'll be able to customize that as well. And they've also have used our mentoring services too to help in some performance issues and some other questions they had. The other company we worked with, you can actually hear about at Connect in 2014 in January. They're going to have a session. It's SMC Corporation, and they wanted to learn more about the controls in the extension library, such as the application layout control, to help them create a better user interface for their XPages apps. So we spent a 4-day on-site course using our Rapid XPages development course, and they kind of got some new skills, and now they're really competing against other application development platforms, and they're winning more and more internal development projects and keeping their apps on the Notes and Domino platform. A couple other, those are bigger companies. We've also worked with IBML, their imaging business machines in South County in Wisconsin. They just have one Notes developer. But we actually worked with them using the web learning tools like GoToMeeting and our self-paced courses and our mentoring services to help train their developers into XPages. And using that, they, for example, South County, the developer there, Mary, created a XPages-based app that the police officers use in their cars to create their daily reports as they go about their day, rather than writing it out by hand and having someone transcribe it when they get back in the office. Another company we work with, a big credit union in the Washington, D.C. area, had 19 developers that we've trained on JavaScript, and also spent a week with them going over some XPages topics. So, if you're interested in learning more, contact us and we can build a training plan for you. If it's just one person, we can help you. Or if you have a team, we can help you build a training plan to learn more about XPages or just get started. Okay, about Q&A. In the WebEx software, you should have a Q&A pane. And if you don't see that, that'll be in the ribbon bar at the top of your screen. You can move your mouse and you should see a Q&A panel there. You can type in your questions as they come up, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So, feel free to go ahead and type them in as you think about them. We will answer your questions verbally at the end. So we have 3 great presenters. All of these gentlemen will be speaking at Connect, and they've all been involved in Notes and Domino and XPages for many, many years, basically from the very, very beginning. Our first presenter is Christian, who is now the chairman of OpenNTF. He has taken over from Bruce Elgort, who was the founding chairman. And Christian is going to kind of introduce us to OpenNTF Essentials and then talk about one of the projects that are in there. And then we'll pass it on to Nathan. We'll get into the new Domino Java API that's available from OpenNTF. Then on to Mark, who will talk about some debugging tools that are in the Essential project. So Christian, I'm going to pass controls over to you. And you should be getting that now, Christian.
Thanks a lot, Howard, and thanks for this great opportunity that we can present here the work we have done with OpenNTF Essentials. So let me go to the presentation. So we call it this session a deep dive into, and as you know, when you go to dive, you can see the whole ocean, or when you go, as it is on a deep dive, down to the ground, you maybe find some pearls, and I hope that we can use some pearls, but we won't see the whole ocean of OpenNTF Essentials. So, but to clarify something, we heard that OpenNTF Essentials is only an update site, but that's not true. OpenNTF Essentials is definitely more than an update site. and it's also more than a project collection. OpenNTF Essential is the coordination of some key projects. We try to bring key projects on OpenNTF together to schedule releases, to synchronize releases, to speak together about which project will solve which problem. And OpenNTF Essential is also the platform to bring developers together. The developers here, which are planning OpenNTF Essentials, and also other developers who will participate. And as Nathan would say, OpenNTF Essentials is the future of OpenNTF, or one of our main paths that we are going to develop OpenNTF in the next years. So, from the technical part, we have OpenNTF Essential, the runtime. It's a plugin that extends the capability of the XWork server and the Domino Designer. And we have the toolbox which delivers debugging and test capabilities and sample code to educate developers. And that's only the beginning. That's not the end. We are in a chat highly discussing what will we do next. We will have a new XSplit X version. We will have new Bootstrap for XPages version, the XPage toolkit, Domino API. All they deliver new versions, but how should we enrich OpenNTF Essential? And that's one of the things that we are discussing now. So I want to go into the runtime, and you know the runtime has in this first version of these projects in there, and I will pick one project. That's the XPT or the XPages toolkit, and I want to show you from the XPages toolkit the annotation-based programming. The several UI elements and the agent-like behavior I won't show you. So first, what you will not see, hopefully, you see now, screen, you will not see how this password. You will not see how this cool RSS feeds and RSS feed UI control has to be implemented. I will also not show you the XPage agent stuff that we have done for agent-like behavior and how you can program these long-running actions here. I will not show you this. I will also not show you the one UI part, the about box, the welcome box, and the tips. I will go and make a deep dive into the Domino storage service. I will talk about this part here. And what I also not show you is the whole presentation layer, because I'm a typical backend guy. I love to program objects and models that can be used by our front-end designer team. So why do I clarify this? You see here my Domino Designer. It's because I want to make sure that you now see the right thing, and I will show you later on how you can now use all these objects and bring it to the page. But first, our scenario is very simple. I'm working on a call center application. I've picked call center because each of us knows how call center works. They are receiving a call, and then they record this call, and this call has to be managed by a defined workflow. And I typically do a model-driven approach when I'm developing. I go to my Domino Designer. Mostly I'm switching here to the Java perspective, but I won't do that now. And then I start programming. I start programming in the way that I say, what the hell is a call? What does a call make? What method, what properties has a call? And say new Java class, take from my, say I have a call object. And I know that I have to make my call object serializable, that it can be used in the XPages framework. And then I open my mind and say, okay, first I need someone who has called the caller, the guy. I need that I can call back his phone number. Typically, I need the date when he has called, so that's the util package. Oh, he has a message leave. So I can take here string and say message. And when I will present this to my end customer, will say, oh, when I have to write the message, can I make something bold and so on? So I know this should be more something like HTML, and the correct object for that is the MIME multi-part thing here. So here is my message. And what else do I need? Oh, I need a boolean to say that it's urgent. And that's the way how I start to program and design my object model. I'm working from this point because I can talk about this already with my customer. I can say what is needed for a call. How do you want to handle this? And when the customer can reflect this, he can say, yes, I need the one who has called, phone number is wonderful, date is wonderful, a message, and you can prioritize by setting it urgent, wonderful, that's all I need. It's a simple case, but you will see it works. So then I have to do some stuff, some typical Java stuff. I have to make some getters and setters, that this is a full-fledged bean. So here is source, generate getters and setters. And normally my business object is done. A little bit formatting stuff, so on. I can start now documentation, and mostly it's evening and I forget to think about documentation. And then what do I have to do? I have to make some other steps. I must make this object available to my front-end team, that the front-end designer can make the XPage and can fill calls and can save calls. That's one thing. The other thing that I have to do is I want to also save calls. So, and based on the paradigm that you do not mix any responsibility, the whole save stuff should be in a call storage service, because I want to save calls, I want to read calls from my Domino database. And while we had developed my WebGate, also an open source project on OpenNTF, Barbara Hagnauer came to me and told me, hey, I'm now writing the storage service for this person object, and I have always to do this replace item value stuff the whole time. How annoying is that? And you have said programming should make fun. And can we not do this better? She told me. And In the meantime, I saw a project from Chain about Domino Persistence API. And I saw this idea also for full-fledged projects on other Java frameworks, and said to me, oh, that would be cool. When I have here my object and I have only to do some annotations, and in a miracle way, this object is saved to a form in the Domino database. So I started to investigate and learn, and now I can present how you can writing the whole storage service without writing more than 3 lines. I wrote in my blog, should be not. we shall see. So first, I have to show you where should I store my class object, my call object. So for that, oh sorry, wrong key. I have this annotation called Domino Store. The Domino Store annotation has some properties that it needs. First, it needs, when I store this call object, in which form, in which node form should it be stored? I write here, write FRM call. Second thing, I have to define my primary field class and my primary field key. A primary field key. Nice. Did forget this. I need also an ID. Primary field, key field is the ID, and primary field class is a string class. So what's missing? Oh, must also have an attribute called view. The view is the attribute which tells me over which node view can I access all the objects. It's a lookup view, lookup call by ID. So voila, that's all. Now I have defined that I want to store this object with a form called FRM call, and I want to store it against the view called loop call by ID, and my field to find other or to synchronize my store with my object is the ID field. So here I have to make getters and setters for it. Voila. So now my storage service should know where it can be stored, but the storage service now doesn't know how he has to synchronize my members with the Domino store, with the form, with the nodes document. So let's define this also. Let's go in this point. Oh, say Domino entity. The only thing I have to define here is the field name, and the Domino entity, this annotation, when it is before each field, means it's related to this field MID. So the value of MID will be stored in a form called FRM call and in a field called ID. So let's do this for the rest. Call phone number, the call date, and yes, the field type here for this call date would be a node state time field, because the store is clever enough to see all these member types and transform them correct. And my multipart thing here will be transformed in a rich text field. Voila. So I've done this, and now I have give all the instruction on my object that it can be saved. And if any new member fields will come to my object here, I only have to define the Domino entity, and the whole thing is set up. Not all. I have to make this view available, and for convenience, I normally also make a form with the right name, and mostly I do also propagate all fields on that form. But that's only for convenience, that I can go into my storage and look which fields are actually there. So what I need now is a storage service, a thing that saves and reads all my stuff. Let's make this called storage service. And here we have after here it is, the abstract storage service. After we have implemented many storage services, we have figured out that the most storage services have the same 4 or 5 methods, and they only changed about the way it acts with the object. So we have made an abstract storage service to handle this in an easier way. So what I have to define here is which object type do we handle. It's the call here. And what I also have to make is one unimplemented method. This is this create object method. We have done this because we think that creating a new object could maybe depend a little bit, and we haven't want that we make a new instance of an object. So here we can say call, and we set here also a new ID for this call. Voila. That's it. Now I have a storage service. This storage service has a lot of other functions in there, and all I had to do was create make this create object function. It's I think in the design pattern called the template methods pattern. So, and now I want to give my developers the capability, my front-end developers, that they can interact with my storage service and that they can create and read all calls. So I define now the API, and typically I do this as a session or a view scope or a application being, depends a little bit on how I want to use them. Oh, there's something else I do normally with the storage service, because I don't want to have 200 different storage services. I make this to a singleton A singleton means I need only one storage service in the whole environment, or one call storage service, because it's not needed that I have any member variables on it. So let's build the API, and I think then is time over, and I have to hand over to Nathan, who can show you then with the whole Domino API how you can process objects like call, and how you can work in a new cool way. But let's do this. A call session, let's say my API should also be serializable. So after a short talk with my front-end developers, they told me, Christian, we need in the call bean, the representation of the call section of data. So we need a method to get all open calls. Oh, nice, all calls. And we need all urgent calls. Can you please provide this? So no problem. I will provide them a list of all calls. So I have to invoke my storage service. With get instance, I am getting this only singleton, one instance, and here I can say get all, and get all needs a view ID. So I can say here all calls. That means the storage service will browse over a view called all calls, and collecting all calls and making this call object. They also requested for a get all urgent calls. So I do the same here. Get instance, get all, and say all urgent. So what I have to do that this will work, I have to make here a view for that, a view with all calls, and a view with in the selection formula only the urgent calls. They also want to have a function to create a new one, new call object. Can also take the same function for create object, and they also want to save a call. So, oh, Boolean. Okay. So that's the API that I have to provide to my developers, to my front-end developers, and with that API, they can now wire all the XPage stuff to the call bean, and it works. They can now save and update objects, and they can work with these calls. If you want to see all the other stuff, as I always say, a good demonstration application is much more worth than a good in-depth documentation. Go to this XPT demo application that's also delivered with OpenNTF Essentials and check out the following code. Here on the Java, check out business object contact, same thing here. Oh, sorry. Check out the contact storage service, and here the contact session was saved. And then see the wiring here on the DSS contact CRUD. That's the place you want to go. Here you see how you read from the contact bin all contacts to an object list source, something new that we provide here. And you see also how you can, with a dialog, create new contact or get a contact by ID. So, and if you have any questions about this, feel free to ping me on Twitter, and if you need assistance to understand it, the code that we have, I will show you more in detail, more in deep. So that's the thing from my part. I think this way to program, it's a very cool way and a very fast way how you can program object-driven, model-driven, and more focused on the thing that should happen with objects than on saving and reading objects directly from the storage. And all this other stuff is covered under the hood from Domino storage service and the abstract storage service. So, hope that have you give a little bit an impression of what we can do here. And now I have to hand over to Nathan, and I hope that Nathan is ready to speak. Nathan, your slide.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right.
And Christian, you'll have to drag and drop to Nathan.
I will give him, after he has talks about the OpenNTF Domino API, about the slide here.
Sure. Okay. So I'll shoot the slide real quick. But before I do that, I want to clarify something for the audience, because I was picking up some chats about this while Christian was presenting. Somebody was asking me about the bullet point in the earlier slide. Essentials is the future of OpenNTF. Well, I want to clarify that statement, because I was the one that asked Christian to put that in. Essentials itself, all by itself, is not the future of OpenNTF. But what Essentials is the future of OpenNTF. So when we first started the organization, open source foundations didn't really exist in the world. I mean, they were tiny little bit of what was going on in the IT world. You know, you sort of had a little bit of Linux here, and Apache was kind of known, but it wasn't really dominant or anything like that. And so the open source groups went in two fundamentally different directions. You had your SourceForge, and that evolved into things like Bitbucket and GitHub, which were just repositories. They were places where people put code that was open source that they wanted to collaborate on. And then you had Apache and Eclipse and the Linux Foundation that became organizations that released open source code, that curated and controlled open source code, and then released that as entire packages. OpenNTF has never made up its mind on which of these two things it wanted to be. And when the new board first met, I propose that OpenNTF should not try to be like SourceForge or GitHub, but instead try to be more like Apache or Eclipse, and that we should take all the great ideas that had been published at OpenNTF and purposefully put them into combined projects that with the purpose of maximizing productivity and value on the IBM collaboration platform. So that's why Essentials is the example of the future of OpenNTF. Essentials is our version of Apache Commons or the Eclipse Core or Google Guava. It is the foundation on which we will build and integrate all the other great material that's gone on at OpenNTF. So hopefully that gives some folks some clarity. I'm not looking at the chat right now, so I don't know if people are telling me that helps. But if it does, then please let me know. And if it doesn't, then ask more questions, because it's really important that we clarify that point. Obviously, everything I just said doesn't really fit into a bullet point on a slide, so that's why we just made it to one sweet sentence.
Thanks for detailed explanation, Nathan.
You're welcome. So on to the actual part of my presentation. I'm going to preface this with the fact that Paul Withers asked me just a couple of days ago if I could step in for him because he wasn't going to be available. So when all of this goes horribly wrong, I seem incredibly unprepared. Yeah, it's Paul's fault, not mine. So the OpenNTF Domino API is a drop-in replacement for the Lotus.Domino API. So for those of you who have been dealing with Java in the Domino world for a while, you know that there are these classes of Lotus.Domino that control everything that you use to access the back end of the Notes object model. And for those of you that come from a Lotus script background, you probably have looked at this stuff in Lotus.Domino and thought to yourself, wow, that's really difficult and cumbersome to use, and I have to do all these weird things like recycle and put everything in try-catch blocks, and I don't really understand why I have to do all this extra stuff, and it seems really complicated. So the mission of the OpenNTF Domino API was to take all the things that people didn't like about the Lotus.Domino API and get rid of them, and instead have the Lotus.Domino API behave more like Lotus script in terms of its ease of use, and more like other Java APIs in terms of standardization of behavior. The entire purpose of it is about nothing but developer productivity. The folks who built this were extremely selfish, right? We looked at the problems that we had in dealing with Java on the Domino platform and said, how can we just make these problems go away and never have to think about them again, solve them one time and publish it and get it over and done with, and just make these problems go away. So that's what we did. So we wanted to, one, end manual memory management. We wanted to get rid of the need to track your objects and call recycle on them. Two, we wanted to establish graceful exception handling. If you work with the Java API now, you know that everything that comes back from an underlying Lotus.Domino call could throw a notes exception, and therefore you constantly have to do all this wrapping in your Java code. We wanted to do something that was easier and simpler to use than that. We wanted real Java iterators. So instead of having to do things like document collection .get first document, and then while doc is not null, iterate over and do .get next. That's gone away in Java. People don't do that anymore in Java APIs. So we wanted to get with doing a proper version of iteration there. We were tired of constantly having to do things like, if I'm going to get a value out of an item, I have to get the 0th element of a vector in order to read the string. It was just constant nightmare handling of how we had to get to actual data. If you wanted to write something back into a Domino item, you had to convert it to a vector. It's just no matter what you were using on the underlying API, it had to be a vector specifically that you had to put back in. Always just so frustrating. So we introduced auto type forwarding that just converts whatever needs to be converted into the appropriate I/O for the underlying NSF platform. We integrated OpenLog so that all of the logging can be done using the OpenNTF project OpenLog, which makes a lot of the exception handling simpler. It makes event logging simpler, and it's all done using the Java util logging API. So there's a standard API that you use now instead of a bunch of platform-specific stuff. And then we introduced a package called Helpers, and Helpers is just lots of really, really useful things that you can do with the API that are just standard things that people have done on the platform for a long, long time. And we'll have some of those in the demo. Okay, if you can, Christian, if you can give me the ability to share my screen.
Yeah, I switch now over to you, Nathan. Voila.
There's a question in the Q&A. Does the runtime need to be pushed out to users' clients, or is it just server-based? If you are running XPink projects, then yes, it does need to be pushed out to individual client machines. But it's only relevant if you're running stuff on the client that would take advantage of what the runtime does. And it's primarily focused on XPages today. So if you're running XPink applications, it would be relevant to do. Okay, so since the API is all about developer productivity, I want to focus on the differences between how you used to do things and how you do them now. So my personal favorite example is walking a view in the old code and in the new code. So here's an example side by side of what you would do with the standard Lotus.Domino API and what you would do with the new Domino code. And I think you can see this is a lot more code than this, right? So what are we doing here? We're getting a database, we're getting a view, we're getting an entry collection, we're establishing our current entry and our next entry, and then we, inside a try block, we set up all of our context, and then we get the first entry, we set the next pointer position of the next entry so that we can then go and do our thing to get the node ID and append it to a string, and then we recycle the entry that we're currently on, and then we move to the next pointer, and the whole thing has to be wrapped in a try catch, and then we have to remember in the finally block to then do our final recycle, and finally for all that we put that string into a view scope variable. So if you think about it, out of all this framing, what's the relevant part of the code? Well, there's getting the database, getting the view, getting all entries, and there's building the string out of what we got from the entries. So with the OpenNTF Domino API, it becomes this simple, right? Just a few lines of code. We get our database, we get our view, and then we do a for loop over the all entries in the view and perform our operation inside the for loop, and that's it. So there's no try catch management that has to go on, because that any issues we encounter behind the scenes log gracefully and move along, and there's no manual management of the iteration, and there's no need to call recycle. Objects are recycled automatically behind the scenes. So hopefully that's a great example of just how simple it is, and just so that you'll know that I'm not making this up, there's an example of it running and building that string. Sorry, I just want to look and see. Okay, I don't know how to go back and see if anybody's asking a question, so I'll have to do that later. Date times are another example. This is actually one of the chief reasons that I wanted to initiate the entire project. I was sitting there writing some stuff to manage conversion of Lotus date times into Java date times, and I just started banging my head against the desk and realized that it was just so frustrating to have to do. Let me see if I have a good example. Yeah, so here's a pretty decent example where in the standard code, dealing with the date times becomes extremely complex, whereas in the new code it becomes quite simple. Right, taking two dates and check to see if the times are the same while they're going to the date portion. It's much easier on the new API side. Let's look at some other examples for documents. So if you want to get things like created date, we've just created a direct getter for that, so it's no longer necessary to do a doc.getCreated and turn that into a Java date. This is a great example because Paul actually has a mistake in his old API code, and this really emphasizes why it's so dangerous to try to do all this stuff yourself. So if you see here in the code, we go to the contacts view, and then we get the first document, right? And then we're thinking, okay, well, we want to find out the creation date of the first document, so it seems fairly simple, right? We have a formatter, and then we're going to say doc.getCreated.toJavaDate, right? Seems pretty straightforward. But there is a very big, deep problem with this code. Doc.getCreated will return a Lotus date time value. And that Lotus date time value that it returns will be parented to the entire session of what's going on in that API. So it's not related just to the document, it's not related to the view, it's not related to the database, it's related directly to the session. And because in this call, Paul did not create a specific variable for that date time object, it cannot be recycled, right? He's chaining methods here. He does doc.getCreated.toJavaDate. That creates a leak right there because the Lotus date time that will be created never has the opportunity to be recycled until the entire session is dropped. But in the new API, you just say doc.getCreatedDate, and that just gives you a Java date. That bypasses the whole need to do anything converting a datetime object. It prevents the leak. It's much simpler to use, and it just can be fed right to the formatter. So that's another example of what we think are some really great productivity and defensive programming tools that come into place. Another example that I was looking at before the webinar is the form name. So here's, if you just wanted to get a document and find out what its form name is, here's the original code that you had to write in order to do that, and here's the new code. You'll notice that ultimately there's just doc.getFormName. We figured that it was so common that you needed to get that one particular field off the document rather than make you go through all the trouble of figuring out whether it has a form field and all that other stuff, which is a direct API call. Keep it nice and simple. So hopefully that gives you some examples of some of the differences. I have another set that is a little more vigorous that I've used in other webinars. So here's some auto-boxing examples. Now these are occasions when what we want to do is save to a document some type of complex object, right? I'm sorry, I didn't really have what I wanted to say firmly in mind here. Let me start again. Where's my code? I apologize, folks. Again, as I said, I kind of had to do things at the last minute here, so I felt a little bit unprepared. Here we go. Here's what I'm looking for. So in the old API, let's say you were doing some processing on the Java side and you were dealing with a date and you then wanted to put that date into a notes document into a particular field. Well, in order to accomplish that, you had to do a lot of framing work to say, well, you had to create a lotus.domino.datetime. So we see here, in order to accomplish that, given some document and some date, we then have to, from the document, find out the database, and from the database, find out the session, so that we can then say, okay, now from that session, I'm going to create a date time. And then, and only then, can we actually do the replace item value. And oh, by the way, we have to do all this try-catch framing and all this recycle management in between, right? So we've created the date time so that we can assign it to the field, and then we have to recycle the date time we just created to make sure that we don't leak any memory, right? In the new API, there it is. That's it, one line. Replace item value with the date, because replace item value knows what to do in order to make the Java date be a valid item to put into the underlying item. What's further is, let's say you had a list of dates. There was a Java-based list. Again, you could just hand it the list of dates. There's no need to figure out how to convert it into a vector. I didn't even want to write an example of this because it gets so complicated to take all those individual dates and turn them into vectors. And if you had a map of strings and dates, again, you just assign it from any kind of data you want, push it right into a field, and you don't have to figure out some kind of special model of how you're going to store this set of string keys and this set of dates. You have a Java map, cram it into the field. It's saved as a MIME format with the serialization of the map, and when you go to read it out, it's very, very simple. In fact, if I knew that what I put in there is a map, I can then say get item value, process date, map.class. So with get item value now, I can hand it the particular class I'm looking for, and the API will convert the content that's actually in the item into the appropriate class before handing it back. Okay, so that's no memory management, auto boxing. Some helpers. So some of the things we do with helpers we think are pretty simple. So one example is now a document implements the map interface in Java. So rather than having to do things like doc.get item value foo, you could just say doc.get foo. It means the same thing, right? It behaves just like a standard Java map. Instead of doing replace item value, you can just do a put, right? So doc.put. If you want to get rid of all the items, it could be kind of a dangerous thing to do, but that's just doc.clear. You want to find out how many items exist in the document, doc.size. Right? So there's a standard map interface, and it's the key to the map is the name of the item on the document, and the value can be anything you want. It doesn't even have to be a particularly valid thing to store in a standard notes document, because if it's not if we can't convert it into something that's simple to store in a basic format, we'll serialize it and store it as a binary form MIME. Yeah, one other thing that's kind of cool too is that if you do a document.get and you give it an at formula instead of the name of a field, we'll actually evaluate this at formula against the document. That's really, really handy stuff. So if you think about all the framing you have to do in order to do a session.evaluate and hand it the document, and it's just, all that goes away. It's doc.get and give it whatever formula you want. We have something called a document scanner, which is just a way to build a set of data about the document. You can hand it an entire collection. So in this case, what it does is you say, let me create a scanner, and then for my database, do a get all documents and process each document that's in the database. And then as a result, the scanner has something called a field token map that maps out every single word that was in any of the any field in any of the documents in the entire database. You wonder why would you want to do that? Well, it becomes really handy for stuff like type ahead. So if we think about the use of full text search in a Domino application, we have this really great full text search engine that goes all the way back to like Notes version 2. But the one thing you can never do with it is say, well, what are all the terms that are actually in this database? The document scanner gives you the opportunity to build that. Syncing. So I'm sure that folks on this call have had the wonderful experience of saying, well, I have some data in this notes database. I have to synchronize it with data in this other database. If somebody changes a customer name in the first database, it has to also change the customer name in the appropriate documents in the contacts database. So I have to do this synchronization. Everybody's written this code, and they've probably written it 100 times. They probably have their own elaborate standards for how it works. Part of what we wanted to accomplish with the API was to create a standardized, synchronized capability and say, this is the one true way to do it, and there's no reason to do anything else. So if you check out this detail on the document sync helper, you can give it a particular strategy for how it does the sync and replace. You give it a map that defines all the rules for how it's going to sync things up, define what its target is, and basically you turn it loose. One thing you'll notice too here is there is a set transaction rule. It's actually in the new API, you can actually box your operations against an NSF into a transaction, and then none of those operations will be saved into the NSF until you finalize that transaction. So that we think is a really, really handy capability. That's basically what I've got for the demos. One important thing to share with everybody is the other tools in Essentials are not yet integrated with the Domino API. So for example, the stuff that Christian has shown, all of that code does not yet use all of the stuff in the OpenNTF API. That is one of the things that we're working on now, is taking these various bits and saying, well, let's make them all operate on the same platform with the same set of rules, so that those other tools will be more tightly integrated as we go along into the next version. Hopefully, this gives you some good ideas on why this stuff will really jolt your productivity. I can tell you that on a personal basis, I write code probably about twice as fast now. Twice as fast is about right. I certainly spend a lot more time thinking about what it is I need my code to accomplish, rather than how I'm going to frame it in a way that avoids memory leaks and the like. So, so if you start using it, I think you'll see a big jump in productivity yourself. And with that, I think I'm ready to pass it on to Mark.
All right, great. Can you give me the presentable?
There you go.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so previous speakers already announced, or Christian already announced at the beginning of this webinar, that the essentials are divided in two parts. There is the runtime, which from which you already saw a couple of projects in the first half of this webinar. There's the toolbox. And in this final part, I'm going to talk about this the OpenNTF Essentials toolbox. So, what is the toolbox? The toolbox are a set of proven tools that assist you with debugging your application, running tests on the application, profiling how fast your code is running, doing some versioning. So these are all tools all support in some way and some of these functions. So in a completely random order, these are the current contents of the Essential toolbox. We have a log file reader in it, and I'm going to explain a couple of these tools.
Mark, if I can interrupt, I'm not seeing your screen. I don't know if anyone can confirm if that's just a problem with me. Are you sharing your screen, Mark?
Let me see what's going on.
Up to the top where it says share.
Yeah.
In the center, and then.
There we go. We got it.
Got it?
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. All right. So I was on this slide. So I'm going to talk about in this part. I'm going to talk about a couple of the tools that are in the toolbox, and I'm going to tell you what all the tools are that are in the toolbox. We have the log file reader, which gives you a browser-based viewing of service log files. We have the XPages toolbox in the Essential toolbox, which gives you the capability to do CPU or memory profiling and create heap dumps. We have the XPages Debug Toolbar in the toolbox, which gives you right in the context of your XPage, access to the scope contents, does some in-page logging and gives you an API inspector. Then we have the XPages Eclipse Debug plugin, which you'll need if you're doing plugin development against Domino. We have the XSP Starter Kit, which is sort of a starter template for plugin development. That already contains a lot of sample code. And we have a couple of components in the toolbox that deal with source control within Designer. So we have a plugin for eGit and a plugin for Subversion.
Hey,
so like
hey Mark, let me interrupt you for a second. While you're talking, if all the participants, if you use the XPages toolbar, to me that is like talking about essentials. That is the essential. Raise your hand in the WebEx just out of curiosity, and we'll come back to it later. Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm just curious to see how many folks are actually using that, that one project that you created.
Which one? The toolbar?
The toolbar. If you use the XPages toolbar, raise your hand.
All right. Let's continue. I'm going to talk about the debug options in the Essential toolbox. So first of all, the log file reader. You probably have all encountered some sort of situation, or you've seen it on the log or on your XPage, that the error message refers to a file called error.log.0.xml, which is located in the folder specified. That file is located on the server, so you might have some situations in which you haven't got any access to that server. That's where the log file reader comes in. It's a database that you can install on your server and allows you easy access to all the server-based log files and also a couple of configuration files. So let me show you what that application looks like. This is the log file reader out of the box, and it gives you, like I said, it gives you access to, for example, all the files in the IBM Technical Support folder. And one of the great features that I really like in this application is that it contains a filter so that it can only show you the HTTP events that are logged in those files. So you have access to the log files, access to every other file in that IBM Technical Support folder. We had access to the one from the previous slide, the error.log.0.xml file. And what's also nice is that this file is now formatted. If you look at the source of this file, it's just a really long XML file, which is really hard to read. Using this tool, it's a lot easier to read. So we also have access to trace logs, startup logs. It reads data from the log NSF database on your server, and the HTTP filter is also available on this tab. So you only see the log events in the log NSF database related to HTTP. We have access to to files like the Node.ini, the XP properties, Java policy, or other configuration files. So this is a great tool to have around when you're doing XPages development. Moving on to the next, the XPages toolbox. The XPages toolbox allows you to do CPU and memory profiling, so you can see how long certain parts of your code took to run. See what that code does with your with the memory on your server. You can have a look at the current memory status, and one of the things I really like is it can create heap dumps on any moment from the JVM that's running on the server. And then when you have a heap dump, you can use that heap. You can read that heap dump using a tool like, for example, Eclipse Memory Analyzer to feel what's going on in your memory and to see if you have any potential memory leaks. It also allows you to change the logging levels of some core objects of the XPages runtime environment, and you can have a look at the current threads that have been created on your server. I'll give you a short demo of the XPages Toolbox 2. So this is the basic application. Installation of this application is a bit more difficult than the log file reader. You need to place this database on your server, but you also need to make a couple of configuration changes. One of them is that you need to add a couple of lines to the Node.ini file, and you need to place a couple of text and jar files on your server. It's all documented very well in in the README file that's packaged with the toolbox. So, for example, the CPU profiler. From this tab, I can start the CPU profiler, and if I then move to another application and I move around this application or do the things that users would normally do, if I then go back to the profiler, let's see here, and stop it, I can see exactly how much time the exercise I just performed took in terms of CPU time, and I can drill down to see what actions I performed have taken the most CPU resources from my server. We have a backend profiler that allows you to view the amount of time and the amount of calls that have been made to certain backend operations on from the runtime. We can do some live runtime monitoring. So, for example, I can take a snapshot, see that I've assigned about 67 megabytes to my JVM, and the amount of memory that's used and that's free. And the session dumps tab allows you to generate the heap dumps I just talked about. So, for example, if I now generate a heap dump on my server, I can go to Eclipse Memory Analyzer, which I've already installed. Open the heap file I just created. And it's located by default in your Domino data folder. And then I can analyze the exact status of the memory when I took the heap dump. For example, I can see which objects are taking up which amount of memory on my server. So going back to the toolbox, it also allows you to do periodic snapshots of your environment. You can view the threads that are running currently, and you can change the log level of about any XPages core runtime object. So that's the XPages toolbox. Going back to my presentation, we've got now. All right, there's one more slide on the toolbox here. Like I said, review the installation guide. It's a bit more complex than the installation of a log file reader. And if you want more information about how to do profiling using the toolbox, I can recommend two resources. First one is the XPages Masterclass video number 3. It's done by Debugging, and in that video he explains on a really detailed level how you should use the toolbox. And there are 2 or 3 blog posts on a blog called the Lazy Notes Guy. The title of the blog posts are Where Did My Memory Go? And then on this blog post he explains exactly how you can install the Eclipse Memory Analyzer and how you can tie that to use that with the toolbox. So onto the XPages Debug Toolbar. I created the XPages Debug Toolbar about 2 years ago because I couldn't find any other way to do proper logging at that time for my applications. I had to refer to print statements all of the time, and those things are really hard to read on the server console. And the server console also gave me a lot of stuff I didn't need at the time. So I wanted to have a tool that allowed me to write debug messages right in the context of an XPage. And that's why I created the XPages Debug tool a while ago. The toolbar also allows me to view the contents of the 4 scopes, so that's the application, session scope, view scope, and request scope at any time. I use the application scope, session scope a lot, and at any time I just want to know what's in there if I'm doing debugging of my application. It also comes with a basic log file reader. It's a lot more basic than the log file reader I just showed you, separate application, and it comes with an API inspector, and I'll show you what that is. So let's go to the demo of the debug toolbar. This is the sample database that comes with the toolbar, and this allows you to inspect all of the methods and properties that the toolbar has and that you can use. like I said, if you add a toolbar to your XPages application, you get this small blue bar at the top of your page. And we'll start off with viewing the contents of my 4 scopes. So these are all the contexts that are in my application scope. So you can see, for example, that I have a variable called app_sample_bar here with its value on the right. It also shows you some of the core objects that are added automatically to the various scopes by the XPages runtime. You can also see from this object that I've installed the OpenNTF API on my server, and that God mode is set to false. So application scope, this is the session scope. All the objects that are currently in the session scope. You'll see that it tries to analyze the variable that's in your scope, and it tries to find a good formatting way of showing you the information. So, for example, I have a hash map here, and the hash map is formatted as a table here on the right. So I can also view the view scope and the request scope. And it also comes with a couple of utility functions that allow you to either refresh the list or hide certain elements of it. And you can also, right from this, using this X button, you can remove variables from the scopes. So next up, the environment in Java tab. This gives you information on your current session and your current environment on the server. So it shows you how you're logged into the server, what your access level is on the current database. If you have any roles, groups, it gives you information on the browser you're currently using. It shows you what server this application is currently running on. So this is a 901 server. Version of the extension library that's installed, platform, and some information about the current database, like the title size, if it has a full text index. Information about the current request that's sent to the server. It also shows you, just like the XPages toolbox, the current status of your Java memory. So in this case, I have allocated 64 megabytes to my XPages GVM, and I've used about a little over half of that. The API inspector allows you to view methods and properties of a lot of objects, and it can do this for almost any object that's available within the XPages runtime. For example, there is always a global view object available in your on your XPage. And if you enter that here, it uses Java reflection to inspect all the properties and methods that view object has. So, for example, I can view the current page title from here. And you'll see here that the page title of this XPage is currently set to this value. I can go back to a level higher, or I can type in any other global object that's available to me in the runtime. What it can also do, or what it also does, it shows you a list of all the components that you have created on your XPage. Shows you a list of those components and allows you to click on any entry on that list. Then you can view what type of component this currently is. So, for example, I have a button on my page. So let me close the toolbar for a minute. This button is available in this list, and if I click on that button, I can see that it's an instance of the XP command button, and here are all my getters and setters and other properties methods that are available on that specific object. So, for example, I can look at the title or the let's see, the value of the button. So you can see here that this is the current value that's on that button. The integrated log file reader is available on the Files tab, and this gives you a list of all the files, almost all the files in the IBM technical support file, and you can click on any of these files to view its contents. Like I said, the log file reader does a better job in this section because it also formats this huge XML file. Then, what I personally think is the best part of my of the toolbar the Messages tab. The Messages tab contain debug messages and error messages that are specifically created for you. So if any other developer is also working on this application or working with this application, you won't see those messages. You only see the messages that are created by actions that you perform. So the sample page comes with all the buttons that will add sample messages to the messages sections. And you can see here that if I click on the info button, that it will add a info message to the messages tab. And if I do that for a debug or a warning message, it will add that message to my personal toolbar. You'll also notice that if I add an error message to the toolbar, that it will interpret that error message, and it will try to give you only show you the relevant information. For example, if I look at this message, doc is null, and I view the code that's behind that error button, this one, I can see here that this is the code I'm executing. I'm setting a doc variable, and then I'm trying to read the universal ID from a document that's still null. This, of course, will throw an error. So I've read my code in a try catch block, and in the catch block, I've written two messages to the toolbar. An error message, just saying that an error occurred, and I'm using the debug.error call to log the entire error message. And this allows me to causes the toolbar to only show the relevant information from that error message. Now, after you install the toolbar, it's really easy to use in any of your codes. So, for example, if you just want to have an info message or a debug message, you just call one of the methods that are available in the on the global debug object. You might have seen on the demo page that you can also log to the debug toolbar from Java. So, for example, if I click on these two buttons, you'll see that a couple of messages are added to the toolbar, and these messages are actually created in a Java class I've added to this sample database. So if I go back to the sample database, view the Java class, I can see here that I have a private variable on this class that takes the current instance of the debug toolbar, and then I can use that variable in my methods to do logging to the toolbar the same way as I've done logging in server-side JavaScript. The Messages tab also comes with a couple of utility functions. For example, you can add a divider to divide sections of your code. You can clear the list of messages here. You can allow it to show the milliseconds, so you can have more detailed information about how long certain function calls took in your code. And you can open it in an external window. So if you open it in a separate browser window, it can be automatically refreshed. So if you add messages to the toolbar, this list will automatically refresh and show you all the debug messages that have been added. One of the last functions I want to show you is that you can also dump any object, or almost any object, directly to the toolbar. So, for example, if I try to dump the session scope here, or dump an object, get rid of this. Just have a look at it in place. I can see here that just using one row of server-side JavaScript, I can dump the contents of the entire session scope or an entire hash map to the Messages tab. And that's what I had for you. So I guess I'll turn it over to Howard again.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thanks, Christian and Nathan. So we have a number of questions. And by the way, you have about 10 people raise their hand that they're using the XPages Debug Toolbar, which is just one project in the Essentials project itself, or you can get it separately. But definitely, I think that's been a must-have for XPages developers, whether you're heavy into Java or just starting out.
Yeah, you may be underestimating how. I think it was more than 10. There were a few questions in the chat on how to raise your hand. So,
okay. We'll add them in too.
I think it was more than 10 ultimately, and that wouldn't surprise me.
But if you haven't worked with that and you're not ready to dive into the whole Essentials project, which we'll talk about now, in terms of some of your questions, at least look at that XPages Debug Toolbar, because that is unbelievably helpful. Anyway, we've got a number of questions here. Let me, Mark, if you move the presentation to me.
Yeah, I will.
Remember, you ask your questions in the Q&A pane in WebEx. Don't use the chat. And we do have some questions already. Hopefully you're seeing my screen now, or at least it's coming up now. Let's see.
We can see it, Howard.
Let me go back to the Q&A. Okay, so the first, probably several questions dealt with installation. So I'm not sure if Nathan or Christian is the best person. Let's look at the installation of the Essentials from three perspectives. One would be the Domino designer, one would be a server, and one would be, if you're using Xping, how you would get it out to your Notes clients. And could, Nathan, are you the one who would be best for that?
Actually, Christian would probably be best because he did design the install process.
Okay, I'm sorry. Christian, you want to, I think that would address several questions that we had.
Okay, first, do you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, wonderful. First, we have all combined in one update site. So this one update site, this NSF can be put on the server. I do it normally in a system or in an install directory, data directory on the server. And then you have to make a reference in the HTTP in the Notes ini called OSGI Dynamics, HTTP Dynamics Bundler. So it's well documented. But that's the easy part, to bring it on the server. Now to bring it on the client, there are several ways you can do it. My personal recommendation is make from this update site, make a widget and deploy this widget all over to your developers. How to make this? We have shown this in our last webinar on OpenNTF. It's, I think, minute number 12. When you go on YouTube, find this from number 12. You have 5 minutes and then you have installed it all. And that would be also the way that I would deploy the same plugin or all these plugins to client to use it from the Xping, because it's very easy and very handy to do it. And we have done this not with the OpenNTF Essentials, but with other plugins on worldwide operating corporations, and that's very easy and handy to do. But these plugins have to be installed on the client. That all works. And when you do only web browser-based development, you have to install it on the server, and the designer, the Domino designer, has also to have this plugin. Does that answer the question?
I would add that in Designer you can also install it by going to the File Application Install menu and pointing to a URL for the update site. So once you put it on a server, it's presumably going to be a web server, because why else would you be putting the toolbox on there if it doesn't have HTTP access? Then you can point Designer to that location and install it into Designer directly from there.
Correct.
Okay, so I have another question for you, Christian, about the Domino store service. And when you were in the code, Sean asked, what ties the @Domino entry to the class variable? In other words, you had m_id, but then you referenced ID as the field name, I think.
Mm-hmm. What was the question, sorry?
So you had the line that had the @Domino entry, and let's say it was @Domino entry ID. Does that just have to be above the line that declares the variable, or what ties that in? Is it after the underscore?
The Domino store definition, the first line that I write before the class statement, there you can set what prefix and what postfix you're normally using. We're using m_ because that makes a member of a class very easy visible, and so it cuts off this m_, makes a good call together and setter. So that means when I set @Domino entity field name equals ID, that means that the value from the next member will be saved to this field ID. You can give any name you want according to the naming convention, which should be respected for Domino fields.
Okay, so it's everything. If you said the preface is m_, it's everything after the underscore.
Yes.
And the case sensitivity doesn't matter, or I guess in Domino field names it wouldn't matter.
In Domino field names, it wouldn't matter. And as I said, the Domino field name as itself is defined by this field name tag. That's the Domino field name. So you can call the field name as you want. And that makes this mapping.
Okay, all right, good. And Christian, while we're talking about the Domino store service, the abstract stored service, you passed in the name of a view. Is there a way to also do view selection there, so you can pass in a view selection formula?
We had discussed this in our team, our development team, and we have said no, we won't do this because of speed. When you're working with selection formulas, it will in fact build a view on the back end. And when you have large thing, then this view will grow. But on my list, on my to-do list for the next release is also the capability to do a full text search against a view or against the whole database. And I think a full text search will maybe close a little bit the gap. But if this is a request that comes from lots of people that you can use formulas in there, selection formulas, please let me know. It's not so a hack to do it. But I don't want to fill up an API with methods that nobody else uses.
Okay, I have a question for Nathan. Are you there, Nathan?
I'm indeed.
Okay, so the question from David is there is a mechanism for including profile calls in Java as part of the XPT. It's not what I consider concise and requires each and every profile method to be defined twice. Some cleaner way to profile would be convenient. Can you comment on that?
Sure. I think if you look a couple of lines down, he suggests the possibility of an annotation to do that. I agree. I think it would be a great idea, and I definitely want to look into it. I'm a little skeptical as to how much value that might bring down in the OpenNTF Domino API, because most of those operations don't really involve things that aren't obviously fast or slow, right? So it's not, if you do a database.search with an @ formula, it's you pretty much guess that that's going to be slow. If you're doing a get nth document, and actually, by the way, get nth document in the OpenNTF version of the API, get nth document throws an exception. So we just don't even let you use it. You have to do, if you're going to use the old iterators, you have to do the right ones, the ones that actually run fast. But yeah, we could add it in. I mean, we have essentially what's going on with the OpenNTF version of the objects is they have delegated calls to the original Lotus implementations of those methods with some control code wrapped around them. So adding profiling into that control code would not be difficult. It would be slightly time consuming. So there's a lot of method calls we'd have to touch. But if that's what people want, then yeah, we can do it. We're pretty much a slave to what people ask us to do with the API.
Okay, I had a couple questions, guys, about the versions of Domino required. Now, Essentials is 9.0 and higher. Am I correct, Christian?
In fact, it's a 901 actually, and the only reason that's 901 is that we have bundled in the xlibx, the X part of the extension library. And we had a lot of discussions in our chat about what should we do with 900 and what should we do with 8.5.3. And 900 is something that we can make available because we have found a way how we can bundle the right extension library on that. And I think near Christmas I will post the 900 version. 8.5.3 is, I think, over 3 years old. Nathan has that a little bit more in detail research. But the thing is, the Domino API has no backwards compatibility to 8.5.3, but I heard that someone is working on that. And the Domino API is in this particular case a little bit I say showstopper to make an 8.5.3 version of it. On the other hand, what I also can tell is I highly recommend to upgrade at least the XPage server, not the whole Domino environment. Actually, it's so easy to have environments with different servers, and most of the Domino administrators do also understand why this is important. I highly recommend to update to 9 or 901. Best would be 901 because also of some security issues.
Christian, this is for the whole of the Essentials project. I know that almost all of the projects in the toolkit will also work on 8.5.3. And also some of the parts of the runtime, like the Bootstrap for XPages plugin, and I think a couple of others will also work on 8.5.3.
And actually, even some older versions too. I know someone asked about 8.5.1 in the Q&A. So yeah, I guess the net is Mark has a good point. You saw a number of projects here today, and if you want them all together in the Essentials project, you need 901 currently, and as Christian mentioned, they're going to look at doing that in 9.0, possibly 8.5.3, but that's probably less of a chance for that. But all the projects you saw today, the vast majority of them will work on 8.5.3 and possibly even older. Hopefully you're not using anything older than 8.5.3, but when it comes to XPages, 8.5.3 is the minimal version you want to be on, and I think Christian pointed out that recently there were some security issues that were announced that you might want to consider going to 9.0 as soon as possible. Right, Christian?
Yes.
Okay, Paul, you got some other questions? I know we're kind of running a little over, and we're going to wrap up in a moment.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Just quickly on installation. If I've already installed one of the components, like Bootstrap for XPages, when I install OpenNTF Essentials, it just overwrites with the most current component that's in Essential. Is that correct?
Yes, we have made some tests about this, and that's also the way why we can say that we can roll out the latest version of the extension library, which will be, as I heard, pushed in the end of this week to OpenNTF. And yes, the latest version will be taken by the OSGI loader. So that means when you have already installed another one, it will overwrite it. But I highly recommend that you do not make such a mess as I had on my computer. Please remove all stuff. It's much easier also for the Domino server to load.
Okay, so recommend uninstalling first. Okay. Howard, did you have any, or I've got a couple?
No, go ahead, Paul, if you're ready to go. I was just actually keeping in the chat.
Question for Nathan, and this is from Paul, be me. What you were showing us in the Domino API was awesome. What about documentation?
Docu what? No, actually, Declan Lynch maintains the Java doc for the API, and other people have really good demos of this. I don't have a good demo of this. You can find it on various YouTube channels, and I think on the wiki for our project at GitHub, where if you're in Designer or you're in Eclipse and you link the Java doc that Declan maintains to the API, then you get all the cool type ahead stuff that you get in the IDE. So if you start typing like database.ft search string, and it pops up and gives you all of the description of what the parameters are for that. I can't show it, but because I don't have it set up on my own system because I have them all memorized. But it really comes in handy because instead of seeing, because if you do it today with the Lotus Domino API, and you start typing something like that, where you'll see, okay, well, this takes a string and an int and an int and a Boolean and another int. And you don't have variable names for any of it, so you have no idea what it does. Right? You're like, what does the third int do? I don't know what that means. It's not useful. If you hook up the Java doc that Declan provides within the IDE, then you get all that integrated into the IDE. And Declan also has on his public-facing web server, he's got a full Java doc hosted version, so you can just go and peruse the API itself. Now, that being said, I cannot claim that we are rigorous doc generators within the API source code itself. Some are better than others. I'm terrible. Paul's pretty good. Jesse's pretty good about it. But I tend to be about speed of my productivity rather than everyone else's. So I will confess that I don't necessarily write very good Java doc. But it does exist. Is that the answer you were looking for?
Yeah, you know what? Great that there is something out there. And now we need Declan to do a Java doc for the IBM APIs. So that's great to hear.
Well, no, you don't need Declan to do Java doc for the IBM APIs. You can just stop using the IBM APIs.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on your comment. Howard, did you have any others?
Yeah, I'll answer this question. Chanmuga, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, asked about XPages connecting to relational databases. And one of the things Christian mentioned was that part of the Essentials project includes the extension library for 9.01. And in that is the relational controls that have been available in the extension library since 8.5.3. So that it does include a set of new controls, new data sources that you can use to hook into relational data in your XPages and look up, and view any relational data you want using the view panel control or repeat or a data table. So that is in the Essentials project via the extension library that's included in the Essentials project.
Yeah, that's correct. We have included the export, and there is also a demo database called XPages jdbc.nsf under the example databases, and that's very cool. Take this database, see how the IBM team has made this, and then you can use it. And I have personally used this thing in many projects.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think we're kind of way over time, so I think we'll stop here, and we will send out an email with a link to the recording and the slides in a few days as soon as we assemble everything. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending and for staying over extra to catch this. And I'd like to especially thank Christian, Nathan, and Mark. If you found this webinar useful, there'll be a Connect next month. Find them, buy them a beer, especially not only for the webinar, but for all the work that they've done on these various projects that they do. Just, you know, it's all volunteer-based. So remember that when you see these guys or anyone else who's created an OpenNTF project that you really find helpful. Don't worry, your boss won't mind that extra beer on your expense report. You know, buy them a beer or whatever they want. So hopefully we'll see many of you next month at Connect. I know all of us are speaking, and so please stop us and say hello. And everyone have a great rest of your day.